with NFL training camp underway, which young drafted players are starting to show up and their stocks are on the rise? Keon Coleman, is Quinton Johnson rebounding, and John Metchie returning to form? We're going to talk about this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. You know, I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Can you talk to him, baby?
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. It is training camp time. DP, all 32 teams are in training camp. You know what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about some wide receivers, man. We're talking about Mr. Keon Coleman, right? The rookie has to replace Stephon Diggs. How has he been doing thus far? Mr. Second-year player, Quinton Johnson, right? Where there's some various takes on Quinton Johnson and what he could potentially be as an NFL wide receiver. And then we're going to talk about our guy, man. I think he we both liked him coming out of Alabama. John Metchie, we know that he's returning. He had the cancer diagnosis. Was it last year before last, and him returning back to form. But man, before we get to this top of the show, why don't you hit him with our title sponsor?
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports aren't sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Keon Coleman, big 6'3", 6'4", 200-plus pound receiver out of Florida State. And it's a guy that was very polarizing during the 2024 NFL draft process. Yep. Some people were in, a lot of people were out. And it was like, well, he didn't run fast at the combine. We start, really just allowing things that wasn't actual on football play to determine how he would play football. And being early in camp with the Buffalo Bills, reports have been kind of glowing for Keon Coleman. He's making splash plays in camp, right? Listening to The Athletic or reading any of their reports, talked about it, man. He's made one of the biggest draws for the fans this season, this summer, and being able to absolutely flash good route running, especially in Key, is something we talked about. He was a good route runner in the short to intermediate portions of the field. He's been a dependable target for Allen whenever Allen calls his number or throws the ball to him. And he's also in 11 personnel, has been taking the snaps at the X, which is something we talked about when we previewed it. But also he's been getting work as the slot receiver as well, Keith. So I think from the reports from camp out of Buffalo, he's showing up. And he's showing up in the way that, okay, you know what you're going to have for Khalil Shakir. You know what you have for Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. To me, he is the missing piece to this offense in terms of, this is a team that wants to win now. They have to win now. You paid your quarterback, all that stuff. You need, after losing two good receivers, one being a top-tier receiver in Stephon Diggs, you need somebody that can come in and alleviate some of, be a target hog in certain situations. And I think Keon Coleman is flashing enough playmaking ability to where Josh Allen's going to trust him as we get into the preseason and then the regular season and the big moments too, Keith. I'm talking about you inside the 30 and it's the fourth quarter. You need that touchdown. You're down 6. A field goal is not going to cut it. I expect him to look Keon Coleman's way.
Yeah, I agree with that, DP. I think is that Keon Coleman is going to do a great job, right? And I like the one part that I like the most is that you're talking about how they've been moving him around, right? Because he's one of those guys, DP, that honestly with the slot that nobody thought to have the conversation, right? It was solely, okay, Put him at X wide receiver. Can he win vertical? If he can't win vertical, we don't like him, right? But with every other wide receiver that, not every other, but other wide receivers, right? We've had the conversation, or even the draft community had the conversation about, they're versatile alignment players. You can move them here, move them there. Nobody projected like, hey, if Keon Coleman can line up in a slot and be that big power slot, can he, like you just called it, right, be a target hog and get a lot of targets via that? And when I think about it, I think he can, DP, at the end of the day. And I like the fact that they're moving him around and they're making him a detailed part of, hey, what we're going to do, because just in case he does go against that highly talented cornerback, right, the Derek Stingleys, the Patrick Surtains, right, of the NFL, and you're like, you know what, this is not a good athletic matchup for him, you can kick him inside, right, and let him win in the middle of the field. And this is a big body, like you talk about, 6'3", 6'4", 220 pounds player that, man, if you're talking about a power slot, he would probably profile as one of the better power slots that you can think of.
100%. And to your point, Keith, a lot of, as crazy as it sounds, like Sauce Gardner is an outstanding corner. He's not really trying to go much the slot.
Yep.
Like a lot of these top corners aren't comfortable defending a two-way go. They love being outside when they have the sideline as their helpmate, that extra teammate. I can squeeze you to the sideline, arm bar you, turn, look for the ball, kind of eliminate you from the progression. But when you move a guy into the slot, now it's not just short area quickness you have to deal with, it's his physicality. He's a physical route runner. He's strong. And talking about Keon Coleman, being able to use his body. If you want to be handsy, he can use his hands as well. And he has multiple access points to grass and to find grass. So I think that for him, and even looking at, just kind of reading more of stuff that they said about him, he's been in the red zone, 14, 15, 20 yards out. He's been the guy down the sideline, being able to win, and Allen trusts him and actually puts that ball. And Allen doesn't, he throws rockets, fastballs, man. Like, this is a 120-mile-per-hour pitcher we talking about. And he's still able to throw and zip those passes in. And he's seeing, and that's how you build that trust with a big arm quarterback. When I fire that ball to you, can you make those catches look routine? And Keon Coleman's been doing that. Full extension, using his full body and the arm length, catching it away from his frame, body control to get 2 feet in. There was one play, I think the refs at practice said he was out of bounds, and then somebody had the still shot from the outside, from the out of bounds angle. Keon had 2 feet in the end zone. I'm like, that's 6. Come on, ref, don't do it to my boy. But I think Keon Coleman is building, not just stacking days and making big plays. He's building that trust with him and Josh Allen. And then also Joe Brady, the coaching staff. Like, being able to figure out, all right, that's why I love them moving them around. Like, all right, what kind of mismatches can we create by moving you around? Can we put Dalton Kincaid outside? And because listen, watching the Patriots for as long as I did when Tom Brady was there, there'll be times where they'll come out in traditional sets, audible, and now you got the slot receivers out wide, you got the tight ends inside. So it's like, okay, so are we taking the linebackers and putting them in the slot versus the tight ends and leaving the corners outside with the receivers? Are we putting the linebackers outside? It creates those type of mismatches, and makes the defense just get helter-skelter. And now they're moving in a level of discomfort that they're not happy with, because this isn't how we designed this defensive set to run. So I'm excited to see more. I can't wait to the preseason. I think we have the Hall of Fame game this week. I'm ready. I'm ready for preseason ball, because now I get to see some of these rookies, because teams are just putting pads on now, Keith.
Yeah, I agree 100% with DP. Let's keep this thing going. Let's keep this thing flowing, man. Coming up next, we're going to talk about Quinton Johnson. We're going to LA Chargers, right? They have Harbaugh there. They have Justin Herbert there. We're going to talk about Quinton Johnson. Can he take that next step? Because they've been kind of mixed reviews thus far, especially him coming out of college, but then also his rookie year, mixed reviews of how he played, but also mixed reviews and results. So we're going to talk about Mr. Quinton Johnson coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Guys, I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Guys, as we creep closer to college football and the NFL kicking off, what better time and place to get in on the action than FanDuel? You can bet on all the preseason favorites, MVP or Heisman. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer because FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Second-year wide receiver out of TCU, Quinton Johnson, a guy that people were saying after a rookie, I've never seen people jump off a bandwagon that fast in my life. After one rookie season, it was like, yep, I'm done here. You know,
Well,
it's like, I don't want that part of it.
I think there were people who didn't care for him coming out of college. And then when he didn't play well, it was, and that's just how it goes in scouting.
Yeah.
It was the victory lap approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, hey, take the victory lap. I'm right on this guy, XYZ.
No, 100%, right? And reading the reports, of course, you hear about Ladd McConkey. We'll talk about and touch on later on this week. But after a tough rookie campaign, right, the reports have been pretty good for the most part for Quinton Johnson early in camp. And they said he looks stronger, he looks faster, he looks sharper in and out of his breaks. He's getting open. And he's caught nearly everything that has been thrown his way and made the tough plays look routine. And it's like they're saying, and one of the quotes I remember seeing was that, and I loved when I saw because that was something I criticized him on. You're 6'2", 6'3", play like it. They say he's playing big now. And when you start playing with your full frame and just, man, you're jumping 40 inches, and you're 6'2", 6'3", play like that. Play like that post player to where if Justin Herbert throws that alley-oop to you, I don't care if it's a defender under the rim. Dunk on him, right? Like, just go get the ball. And they're saying he's playing big, but the route running, he's not dropping passes like that. To be able to put that in, I think we talked about this. It was confidence. Like, you could tell he was a rookie. He was in his head. He was dropping passes, and it just started snowballing for him, Keith, where it was like, man, I'm not making the plays that I'm used to making.
Yeah, and it was a volume problem, right? Like certain guys may be, and this can be maybe a basketball reference, right? Is that I kind of have to get into the flow of the game, but when I'm not getting a lot of reps, right? When I'm not getting shots up, when you can't expect me just to come off the bench cold in the third quarter when I've been sitting down, because he was not one of the key, because you still had Mike Williams, even though I think Mike Williams got injured, you still had Keenan Allen, you still had Palmer, right? And then there was still other guys that were trying to get involved in the offense that I think even if you look at maybe percentage of targets or targets where he was targeted, or passing plays where he was targeted, I feel like it was at a very low percentage. So I'm expecting to be a high volume guy, and then I'm coming in the third quarter, haven't been doing anything the entire game, and then I just have to be ready, right? Like maybe that's just something where it's like wasn't dialed in. Now, is that okay? No, but I think it's something that has to be understood also, right? That how many NFL starters can do that, right? Just come off the bench cold in the middle of the third quarter and then throw them 3 passes and they locked in and ready to roll, especially if that's not a role that they're used to playing, right? We just talked about it. They always talk about that with basketball guys, right? Like coming off the bench cold, who can do it? Every starter is not meant to be a bench guy. Every bench guy is not meant to be a starter. So I think if you make a concerted effort to get Quinton Johnston into the routine and the rhythm of the game, I think it plays out well. DP, I seen a quote from Harbaugh, and he kind of talked about it that, hey, I feel like that Quinton Johnston really got a bad rep, like after last year. And I think people looked at the catches, they looked at the drops, but didn't look at the flow of the game, right? And how he could potentially be utilized. And with the old coaching staff, you couldn't put anything past anybody there, right? As far as whether or not people were effective or not and were doing the right thing by the players. They had Justin Herbert and didn't make the playoffs. Like you had Justin Herbert for years and did not make a big time impact. So
coaching malpractice at its finest. That's what that was. What we were seeing with Brandon Staley, and like that was one of the quotes from thank you for Yahoo Sports, Charles Robinson, who's been in the game for a long time. Shout out to him. He talked about it. He made a graphic kind of putting out his quote about it, and he talked about it, like he's playing bigger, more confident, and he's not fighting the ball. He's like, the staff is excited about Quinton Johnson. I think, he's been making some outstanding grabs down the sideline. I remember seeing one of the clips where Herbert kind of threw it over the outside shoulder, and he just plucked it out of the air. It's out in front of him. Use your arm length, use that wingspan, go ahead and catch that ball. And doing this, similar to Keon Coleman, QJ, this is how you get those targets. Now, and I think Charles Robinson talked about this. He's like, be wary of talking about the actual usage, and be cautious of the volume for Justin Herbert in this Greg Roman offense. Because as we've talked about ever since the Greg Roman hire, they're going to run the football, right? So it's like, that's just who he is, right? He don't have a Lamar Jackson. That's why I'm interested to see how his passing concepts look, because like, you don't have Colin Kaepernick, you don't have Tyrod Taylor, you don't have Lamar Jackson. That's not who Justin Herbert is. He is he has straight line athleticism, but he's more of a passing quarterback.
He's not those. He's
not that.
He's not that.
Like, he is not that. Then they don't have the tight end talent that Baltimore had, that he had in San Fran with Vernon Davis and Delaney Walker, right? He doesn't have Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews and Pat Ricard, and he doesn't have that. So it's like, now let's see what this passing offense looks like. But these young receivers are stepping up and are up to the task for them. So there's like, watch out, pay attention, to be cautious with the volume for Justin Herbert in this offense. But it's at the end of the day, I think for Quinton Johnston, making the plays he's making now, right? Not being just resourceful, but reliable, showing that reliability to your quarterback to say, okay, third downs, yeah, I could look to Ladd, but it's 3rd and 15. Like, Ladd's not going to get me what I need on 3rd and 15. Quinton Johnson can, or if you're playing a team like Spags, right, who can mix and match coverages, he's going to show you something and play something totally different post-snap. Spags will show you cover 3, but it's actually man-to-man coverage, right? He'll show you man-to-man, but it's actually cover 4. And if you're going against one of them situations with Spags and that talented secondary he has, and they're playing heavy press man, right? What if they take, Trent McDuffie and throw him on Ladd? I like Ladd. That's Trent McDuffie. I'm taking Trent. Let me go ahead and throw that ball to Quinton Johnson, who's going up against a younger, probably less proven corner like a Josh Williams or one of those other guys that they've drafted over the last year or two. I just think that the opportunities will be there. And him being able to build that confidence, not just in himself, but with the coaching staff and with Justin Herbert, that when I really need a big play, I can look QJ's way, and I know he'll come down with it.
I agree with that 100%. And we'll just it'll be interesting to see how he gets involved. I think that Harbaugh is going to understand that he has to have, because they made a concerted effort to go get wide receivers, right? So I'll be interested to see, and maybe we have to dive into this coaching staff, DP, and look at, who's the passing game coordinator and who's, the quarterback's coach, because maybe they're going to affect the passing concepts more, right? And it's just weird because with Harbaugh, we haven't had that, even like you said, from the 49ers was run heavy to, now that I think about it, DP, I'm having a slight curveball right here and question, did he coach Andrew Luck at Stanford?
Harbaugh, yeah.
And if he did, then maybe that's where we kind of source to, right? Is that's maybe potentially how he's going to run the offense. And I believe his OC was Pep Hamilton during that time, right? So maybe it'd be some similar things like that. But that's what I expect for Justin Herbert. Talking about Quinton Johnston, second year, right? We both liked him. I think that we have to understand that there's tiers to this, right? Like, obviously, everybody's not going to be Justin Jefferson and Devontae Adams, right? And just come in and tear the league up. But where could he land is a pretty good NFL player, right? Like, you can get your first round return on investment with him if used properly. DP, coming up next, man, we're going to talk about one of my favorite draft prospects yet, and he's returning, has a really good story, man. He's returning, obviously, his battle with cancer. And all reports are that he's fully healthy, he's rocking and rolling. That's Mr. John Metchie down there in H-Town. We're going to be talking about him returning to form coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which make getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Guys, on Game Time, their tickets are easy to find and buy for every kind of event in your area. Again, they show the views from your seat. So before you purchase that ticket, you know exactly what type of vantage point you're going to have. Guys, it's very simple. Allow Game Time to help you out. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Houston, third-year wide receiver. This will be his sophomore year actually playing because he missed, like you said, Keith, in the transition. He missed his first year due to battling cancer. John Metchie, man, and the guy that we both love coming out of Alabama, route runner, good explosiveness. He knew how to win one-on-one and get open, right? And we saw that with him and Bryce Young that last year at Alabama. Heck, I'll never forget the Iron Bowl where Jameson Williams get knocked out for a bull crap call, a BS call on I think blocking the back or targeting or something like that. I hate that call in college. And then John Metchie took over the game and won the game against Auburn in one of the most spirited rivalries in college football, which is the Iron Bowl, man. It just showed his full array of a skill set. And now word out of camp is that he's been cooking, and especially in one-on-ones. They got fully padded, and even against a guy who we both love, Derek Stingley, and he's like, man, that's the kind of the barometer, right? Like when you can go up against an all-pro caliber man-to-man corner and have success, that's a good telltale sign that, hey, I'm back, right? And showing the quickness, the short area burst, and he's so good and nuanced as a route running, Keith, to where it's hard to get a beat on where he's actually trying to go. And like that's what I really love about John Metchie, because you see with the reps, if you go on X or Twitter and search his name, you'll see some of these clips where he's out here routing guys up, and it's like, yeah. And the dangerous thing for this Texans offense, he'll be the guy that nobody's thinking about. He'll be the guy that when you think about Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, it's like, oh, wait, John Metchie might have a game with 8 catches because the defense is trying to stop some of these other guys. And that's what I'm excited for when it comes down to Metchie and him looking the way he is, because at the end of the day, no matter if it's a linebacker, safety, or corner, he's been cooking mostly everyone in Houston Texans training camp. Whether it's sunshine or rain, he's been getting the job done. And I'm excited for him in 2024 because he was a guy that I think we talked about, like, man, he might be a potential trade candidate for some teams that need wide receiver help, right? Like the Panthers or any of these other teams, the Patriots. You need a young receiver that can come in and do the job. You might at one point you might have been able to pry him from the Texans. If he keeps this up, I don't think you have to worry about it because I don't think Houston's going to deal him.
No, I agree with that, DP, and I think the Texans are going to be they're going to have a situation, right? Because maybe potentially they didn't know how John Metchie was going to recover, right? But they spent the second round pick on him, like a high. I think he went pick 44 overall, right? So you're talking about being 12 picks away from being a first rounder. I think I gave John Metchie, it might have been a late first or early second round grade coming out of Alabama. And for me, DP, he was just one of those guys where I was like, you know what, based off of his athletic profile and what I seen on film, is that I'm going to push my chips to the middle of the table for him, right? I'm going to bet on him, and then I'm perfectly fine with losing with this guy as far as, stamping him and saying that he's a me type of football player, right? And I liked him and standing on the table for him. Him getting the opportunity in Houston it's going to be a lot, right? Just because they have so many guys at this point. I mean, we still have the guy they drafted right last year. Xavier Hutchinson was another football player that I really liked overall. So if I look at it, DP, this is where I think John Metchie, he's obviously going to have to carve out a role for himself, but I think he can do it because he's electric. And maybe I'll say it. I think at his peak, I think he's Tank Dell electric. I think he has that type of electricity to him. I think stop ability, route running, explosiveness, to be the opportunity to be a vertical threat, right? The opportunity to work the short to intermediate parts to catch quick screens. You can run him on orbit routes, in and rounds, things like that. You can find so many creative ways to get the football in his hands. And I was just impressed with how quickly he can accelerate and decelerate as a football player. And we know that's when the separation comes, is when you're able to stop on on a dime, and then that defensive back is still in trail technique. Or there were so many times I can't forget the Tennessee game with him, watching him as a draft prospect. And that defensive back was bailing out of there so quickly because he felt John Metchie's speed. And then there was one time he didn't bail out of there, and John Metchie went right past him. And you could see that he was just like, oh, man. So it's just a tough situation. But I will tell you this, DP, all the reports, I'm excited for this guy. This is a guy that we both evaluated. We both like coming out of the draft, still finding those guys that are turning it on. And maybe the narrative isn't perfect around the three guys that we talked about, right? Keon Coleman, Quinton Johnson, John Metchie. But, man, you got to trust the film, watch the film, and then hopefully placed in situations, all three of these guys are able to turn this thing around.
Yeah, I think all three guys' stocks are up. Keith, Keon, Quentin, and John Metchie just through the early portions of camp, and then as we get through the next couple weeks as well. But for them, it's going to be now turning the success of training camp and practice into preseason reps. I'm facing the defensive back who's trying to make his team. I'm facing a safety who's trying to make his team. These guys are going to try to hit me. They're going to try to hit me with everything they have. They're going to try to press man me. They're going to try to do everything they can to prove to their coaches, hey, I deserve to be on my team, on our team. So now that's where it goes from, hey, yeah, in camp, your teammates will pull up and they're like, hey, I'm going to make sure I don't hurt you. Yeah, that guy, that first preseason game, that young man across from you is not thinking about your health. He's thinking about his paycheck, taking care of his family, because families need to be fed. And I think all these guys' stocks are up. And I'm ready for preseason, man. The training camp stuff, I love it. Football is back. It's in the air. The grass is cut. All that stuff, Keith. But I'm ready for some preseason ball, because I want to see a lot of these guys then go from training camp stars to because that's when you become undeniable, in my opinion, Keith. When you go take that success from training camp and your practices against your teammates, and now you're going against another opposite foe, opposite opponent, and you still have success. You're still winning, right? No matter, even if you're not getting the ball every rep, but you're out there Chad Ochocinco on this thing. I'm open all game, coach. I'm open, and that's what these coaches want to see. Like, all right, can we turn these into valuable game reps? Because we see a lot of guys who are practice guys who don't turn it into game. And then we see some guys that okay in practice and they turn it up in games, right? You got to see who's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde in this situation and figure things out. But I'm excited for all three of these young men. Like I said, training camp stock watch, I think all their stock is going up, Keith.
No, I agree 100%, DP, and we could get this thing rocking and rolling heading into training camp. And I know there's going to be more reports, right? More things that we have to talk about. But I like this part of the process, too, is because this is when we first start getting information, right? Like who's doing what. And I'll tell you this. I know that the scores aren't going to count, right? The touchdowns aren't going to count. But even just from my time at LSU, right, training camp matters. And usually those guys who perform well in training camp, you start to see that translates to those are the guys that perform in season. So hearing these type of reviews are very important, and they're definitely tells to what could potentially happen in season, right, and how these guys will perform overall. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. Listen, we here. If you can hear my voice, man, tap in. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you comment. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel over on Locked On NFL Draft. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. Like I always like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. On tomorrow's show, we're going to get into Xavier Legette, Jonathan Mingo. We got some guys in Carolina who's starting to show up for Bryce Young. And does that mean the stock is up for the young quarterback? I think so. So we're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.